It's Tuesday, May 3rd.
From inside the WTOP newsroom, this is the DMV Download, presented by Steamfitters Local 602. Learn how Steamfitters can benefit your business at steamfitters-602.org.
Today, we're spending the entire episode speaking exclusively to Fairfax County's police chief, Kevin Davis, on his one-year anniversary on the job. And he broke news. 2 months after Hannah Choi disappeared from her Alexandria home and police charged her ex-boyfriend in her killing, he's still on the run. Chief Davis says they've homed in on where Joel Marino is, and he gives us an update in the investigation.
We suspect we know where he is, and we anticipate that he'll be apprehended in the very near future.
And in the second part of our interview with Chief Davis, he tells us which car model is becoming a target in driveways across our region. So much so, they've created a whole task force for the crime.
The theft of catalytic converters is driving our crime so far this year.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Cloherty.
And I'm Luke Garrett. 1 year ago, Fairfax County saw a shift in its public safety with the arrival of Chief Kevin Davis. He's a local guy. He grew up in College Park and served Anne Arundel, Prince George's County, and Baltimore before coming to Fairfax. But he stepped into a new role at a time of low morale following a very difficult 2020.
So, Chief, we'll start with one of the biggest cases in your county in the last year, the disappearance and killing of Hannah Choi from Alexandria. And just to remind everybody, the 35-year-old was last seen on March 5th with her ex-boyfriend, Joel Marino, having dinner at an Outback Steakhouse. Weeks later, detectives recovered her body after someone spotted it in Piscataway Park in Charles County. There's a $40,000 reward for Marino, who was last seen in Atlanta, Chief, but you've been looking for him for 2 months. I mean, where is he?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. So I'll say this, and I can't say everything that I want to say because our detectives are working really, really hard to put Joel Marino in a set of handcuffs for that horrific crime that he visited upon Hannah Choi. So we suspect we know where he is, and we anticipate that he'll be apprehended in the very near future. You mentioned kind of the newsworthiness of some of our higher profile homicide investigations, and every homicide investigation is an important one, but we've certainly had some big ones recently. You go back to 2021 with Emily Liu and the search for her killer and the eventual apprehension of her killer, and in 2022, Hannah Choi. We will get Joel Marino. I promise you that.
And a case that is solved is the murder of 20-year-old Ahmed Ibrahim, who went by Kareem. He was killed in January in Alexandria. 2 people faced charges in his murder, Joel Sarabia of Fairfax and a 17-year-old, even though his body hasn't been recovered. Is there any chance that we'll find Kareem's body?
We just finished about a month-plus search at a landfill in King George County, Virginia, because we still have not recovered Kareem's remains, and we want to do that for the family and the community. And we've been working constantly with the faith community associated with Kareem's family, Kareem's mother and father. It's unusual to have a murder arrest when you don't have the victim recovered yet.
Right.
And we've had that twice. We had that, we had criminal charges against Joel Marino before her body was recovered. And we have criminal charges placed against Kareem's 2 killers, 1 adult and 1 juvenile, and we have not yet recovered his body. That's very unusual. But I'll say this, and I've been doing this for a while in some pretty large jurisdictions. I've never been involved in anything as sophisticated as I was involved in with the FCPD in the landfill search in King George County, Virginia, in an effort to locate Kareem's body. And all the national experts who came in and all the vendors who came in and worked with us told us at best we had a 3% chance of recovering Kareem's body. So we went into it just with the best intentions on behalf of the family. And unfortunately, we weren't able to recover Kareem, but that prosecution is pending.
Can I ask, and this is probably a yucky question, to be honest with you, but how do you search a landfill? I mean, how deep do you go, or how do you know what you're? I don't even know how to ask that question.
Well, Megan, I know more about landfills now than I ever thought I would. So,
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it's a part of the job, especially when it comes to policing.
So we knew, and based on our detectives and their investigation that started immediately after Kareem went missing, we knew that Kareem's killers placed him in a particular trash dumpster. And we knew which trash company had a contract to empty those containers, and then we also knew from that where they took their refuse. So based on that, then we had the landfill, and the landfills they're very intentional in terms of where they place materials that get delivered to them. They know
really
scientifically based on where the companies come that deliver the refuse, where it is located. So we narrowed down that search at this huge landfill.
Like they dump it by date, basically, or there's
by
some
date
kind
and
of
location.
Wow.
So we knew
Like a
it was about the size of a football field. So when we had our grid nailed down, and this is all very scientific, and there's a lot of sophistication associated with landfill protocols. So we knew scientifically that Kareem's body was in about an area the size of a football field, right? So that doesn't sound too big, but the challenge associated with that was we had about 28 feet of depth to now work with and to search. And that was the hard work we went about doing. And we had not only Fairfax County police officers, we had retirees came out, and we had about 50 cops, retired and active, searching every day for about a month for Kareem's remains. And we were unfortunately unable to recover his remains for the family, and that's heartbreaking. But it was a very sophisticated search and recovery effort. And, on a larger scale, Fairfax County Search and Rescue Team, the SAR team, is renowned. They do search and rescue activities better than anyone. And when we went searching in Maryland for Hannah Choi, they were a big part of that.
I want to return to that case just because, first of all, it is a domestic case as her ex-boyfriend is charged in her murder. My question is, he was pretty early on identified as a person of interest and then a suspect, and he was able to get to at least Atlanta, we know. So clearly he fled. How did he flee? How was he able to get away so quickly when we knew she was missing on May 5th. We didn't know she was killed, right?
Right.
But how does that happen where if it's kind of the obvious person ends up being your suspect in the end, how does he get away?
He gets in his car and goes. Describing someone as a person of interest versus a suspect versus a defendant, there are various levels that we have to work toward in terms of thresholds before we can charge someone criminally. So we're immediately looking for witnesses, and we're looking for surveillance camera footage, and we're looking for forensic evidence like DNA and fingerprints and blood and serology. So while all that is furiously happening, we suspect that this ex-boyfriend, who was still living with her at the time of Hannah's murder, but in a separate part of the house, he was immediately a person of interest, which is pretty logical, right? Mm-hmm. Immediately a person of interest. And then we had to build a case carefully. And we had to work with prosecutors from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to establish probable cause. So by the time we established probable cause, he was on the run. Action is faster than reaction, right?
Yeah.
So his action to flee after he committed a murder is often faster than our immediate capacity to build enough probable cause to charge him with the crime.
Right. You've got to have your ducks lined up so that when you do get him, it goes through and
sticks.
It's clean. But how frustrating is that? If you know this is your guy, this family is grieving. I mean, it's just got to be – it's the same thing with Kareem.
Right. Well, with Kareem's case, we made the arrest pretty quickly.
I know, but you don't have the body. I mean, I guess it just these sort of –
It is frustrating because there are certain, expectations that families have when they're going through the unimaginable tragedy, and one of them is to be able to bury their loved one.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that we were unable to do that for Kareem's family. It really is. And with Hannah and having a person of interest, and detectives are working furiously, but working furiously can't be at the expense of thorough, ethical, constitutional work. So we got to do the work the right way, or else it'll get to a courtroom and fall apart, and then the killer remains free.
Is there a case that's like still in your craw? Like, is there something that that has happened this year that really sticks out to you?
So Anthony Eugene Robinson is a person we dubbed the shopping cart serial killer, and he's standing trial in Southern Virginia soon. I don't know when, for 2 murders he committed there, and he committed 2 similar murders in Fairfax, and we have not yet charged him. He's in custody on the other cases, so we're still developing and strengthening our cases and the charging apparatus associated with our cases.
Just to get ready for him, basically?
Just to get ready. What really kind of bothers me is we know where else he has lived, and he's lived up and down the East Coast from Virginia to D.C. to Maryland and all the way north to New York. And he's had many interactions with people throughout his life, and I suspect that there are more victims. And we've collaborated and continue to collaborate with other jurisdictions who are looking at him. So they're looking at him first, and then they're going back to their cases that are unsolved, and they're looking for that that victim. So the victimology is associated. So it's a loner. It's a female victim who was maybe online or maybe otherwise vulnerable or maybe addicted to drugs. There is a certain profile associated with his victims.
I was going to say, tell us a little bit about him, because he was called the shopping cart killer for a reason.
Well, he would transport his victims after he killed them in a shopping cart and would dispose of them. And we know this. We're not guessing. So he would get, he typically meet his victims online, and there would on occasion be conversations about meeting to engage in drug activities and other consensual acts that would eventually lead to murder. And after he murdered his victims, and we know this to be the case, he would dispose of their bodies by putting them into a shopping cart and then wheeling them, sometimes in broad daylight, to a secluded location, or in the case of Fairfax County, to a nearby waste container. And that's where our two victims, sadly, one woman from California and one woman from Washington, D.C., that's where we found their remains. And he would meet them online, and we can prove that he met them online, and we can prove he stayed in the hotel, and we can prove they stayed in the hotel. So it's just a sad case. But what worries me about people who are serial sex offenders, serial killers, is that they don't stop until law enforcement and the community stand together and find a way to stop them.
Do you think there are more victims in Fairfax County or in Northern Virginia?
I don't have anything that tells me there are, but he's been everywhere, but from Southern Virginia to upstate New York. So I suspect that there are.
And coming up, Chief Davis tells us why Ancestry.com and 23andMe are helping police solve cold cases.
If you want to save money and grow profits on your next commercial heating, cooling, HVAC, or refrigeration project, go with the men and women of Steamfitters Local 602. You can trust the experience of its workforce, members who have expertise in heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, and process piping to deliver work that's on time and on budget. For a partner you can trust who's mutually focused on your bottom line and to schedule, contact Steamfitters Local 602 at steamfitters-602.org. That's steamfitters-602.org. Steamfitters Local 602, changing lives. Thanks for listening to the DMV Download podcast.
Megan and I do this show all on our own, and we appreciate you making us a part of your day. If you like the show or have a suggestion, let us know by leaving a review or rating the show.
Both of those things help us get better and help us grow our audience. Thanks again. And we're back sitting down with Fairfax County Police Chief Kevin Davis.
So, Chief, you came into the Fairfax County Police Department during a pandemic, and that's affected everything in our lives. It's also impacted crime itself. Chief, among them, domestic violence. We've seen reported cases actually kind of go down during the pandemic, but experts really believe that cases have gone up of domestic violence. So how have you seen this play out in Fairfax? And just more broadly, how has the pandemic really affected policing?
Well, geez, that's a lot. I think one of the biggest observations I had in 2021, we had 21 murders in Fairfax County in 2021. And for a jurisdiction of 1.2, 1.3 million, numerically, that's a small, raw number. But nearly 1/3 of our murders in 2021 were adult children who were living at home or who were in some type of crisis. And they ended up killing their mother, their father, and on one occasion, their sister. And as you look back at the pandemic and the isolation and the depression and the anxiety, and you put that on top of someone who may already be experiencing a mental health crisis or a behavioral crisis, and they're in a home, that's where I think we saw an explosion of nearly 1/3 of our murders in 2021 happened indoors in the home, family member on family member. So and as I kind of look at our domestic violence calls for service this year, our domestic violence calls for service are up about 32%. This year compared to last year.
And so, Chief, within this first year, with all these increases in domestic violence, how has your department combated that?
So Fairfax County's commitment to the co-responder model, having a police officer and a mental health professional in the same car to respond to those obvious calls for service when someone's in crisis. We're in phase 1 of that project, and we're going to continue to get bigger and better with that.
What does phase 1 mean? You guys started this?
With a limited number of police officers. Doing it, and it's not 24/7 yet. It's on certain days of the week, and it's not 24 hours a day. But within a short amount of time, we're going to introduce more CIT-trained, crisis intervention training officers, and put them together with mental health professionals. and they're going to get dispatched or self-dispatched to those calls for service that you hear on the radio, and you just kind of know. It's intuitive. That's a person who's in a crisis, and to have someone, a mental health professional, respond with a police officer gives an immediate opportunity to divert that person to other treatment beyond a pair of handcuffs.
And the pandemic also brought on a huge rise in carjackings. What have you been seeing in this first year, and what is there to do about it?
We just stood up for the first time a full-time auto theft team. So we did not have a full-time commitment to auto theft enforcement in Fairfax County. We do now.
But in responding to the crime trend, right? I mean, you didn't really need one before as much as you do now, I would imagine.
Right. So our motor vehicle thefts this year are up 26%. And, one of the crimes that scares me the most everywhere I've been is the crime of carjacking. It's committed by young men, plural, and they're armed and they're scared and they're amateurs. And this is, kind of minutia, but the theft of catalytic converters is driving our crime so far this year.
Really?
Catalytic converters. So it's a
meaning you come out to your car from your house, and all of a sudden your catalytic converter's missing and your car won't start?
It takes about 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the skill level of the thief, to remove your catalytic converter from the bottom of your car. So they access it with a Sawzall type tool, and they're often running with it. The precious metals. Yeah. Now, you're going to get me in trouble if you ask me to go beyond precious metals.
Chemistry.
But the precious metals that are contained in these catalytic converters are worth a lot more now than they have been in the past. Yeah. And the cars that are impacted the most are Priuses that were manufactured between 2004 and 2009. So we actually have a catalytic converter task force in Fairfax County, and we're working with regional and national law enforcement partners because it is a trend that's not only here in the DMV, but it's a national trend. But auto thefts, the thefts of catalytic converters, those are some of the big concerns in 2022.
I want to move to DNA technology. Advanced DNA technology has led to the closure of 2 cold cases in your county, with the arrest of 59-year-old William Clark of Ashburn for the abduction and sexual abuse of a 14-year-old back in 1987. And this one has not been closed, actually. The analysis of a woman whose body was found in 2001. I know your investigator at O'Carroll is working on this and saying, hey, we're partnering with these 2 labs that are helping us really make strides here. I think they're DNA Solves and Othram Incorporated. My question to you is, why do we need outside labs to pitch in on this? What are they providing that Fairfax didn't have before? And are there more cold cases that could be closed because of these partnerships?
So what Rapid DNA does is it gives us the immediate ability to make a comparison. So we have blood, serology, DNA from a scene. And then we have probable cause to take your DNA because you're a person of interest or a suspect. And without going through CODIS, which is the national database, we can do that one-on-one comparison. So we have crime scene forensic evidence, and then we suspect that, Megan, you're a person of interest, and we have probable cause now to execute a search warrant on your person and swab you for your DNA inside your mouth. The DNA technology, we can make that one-to-one comparison right now.
But similarly to the Golden State Killer, which is the one that everybody goes to, I think Clark, wasn't he traced through genealogy, or somebody else was uploading
that genealogy research is fascinating. My parents are still alive, and when I turned 50 a few years ago, they got me the Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
Birthday.
Yeah.
That's a great birthday present. So I was looking for something a little fancier when I turned 50. So I did that. I spit into a cup, and I submitted my DNA to Ancestry.com, and on a side note, I'm 91% Irish, so that's pretty good.
That's very good. I mean, according to me. According to me.
According to you. All right. So, but these companies that capture DNA, and we just kind of did this with the closure of a 1987 really vicious sexual assault case. If we have DNA recovered from a scene, we put that DNA into a national database called CODIS. But if your DNA is not in CODIS, we simply have the DNA from the scene, and we don't have anything to compare it to. Well, the genetic genealogy research allows us to interact with companies that capture DNA, our family's histories with us. And even if your DNA is not in Ancestry.com or 23andMe, but your brother's is. You have a brother, right? If your brother participates in one of those programs,
right,
his DNA's in there. So the match will be...
And it would lead to me if I committed a crime.
It would lead to you.
Yeah.
It would lead to your brother. Hey, we have some DNA evidence from a crime scene. It's not a match for you, but it's enough match with your DNA that we know the person is related to you.
Wow.
Brother, sister, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth cousin.
So with the prevalence of this and people getting these kits for their 50th birthdays and so on, I mean, why are we not solving more cases with it? You would think there would be many more closures.
Well, I think we're just entering into this new era.
It's a new realm.
Yeah, it's kind of like the driverless cars, which I will never get into, by the way. We're just trying to figure this out, and we're trying to do it legally and ethically too, because there's a little Big Brother-ish aspect of it all.
For sure.
And that's why I think public safety in particular, and we have to inform elected officials and governments that this technology passes the smell test of constitutionality.
But when you give your DNA over, I mean, technically, when you spit in that tube and you send it in, you're signing away that you are giving your DNA to be accessed.
Right, the size 8 font print. Yes,
Yeah,
it's there.
Well, I mean, yeah,
right.
it's
Unfold
there.
the paper.
That's right. But
Are there any cases that are like on deck?
There are several on deck, but none that I think I can speak of, or else it would be premature of me. But I appreciate the question. But we want to do this thoughtfully and carefully, and the rapid DNA capacity really just gives us the ability to solve cases faster.
So, Chief, your police department has 134 positions left to be filled. That's a 9% vacancy rate. This is consistent with so many other police departments around the country, and with all of them really wanting more officers, and there really being only a limited number of people to pull from. How hard is it to find these new police officers?
It is very difficult right now to recruit young people in particular to our profession. Several years ago, 5-6 years ago, we were attracting about 4,100 applicants a year to our police department, and last year we finished with about 1,500 applicants. And that's in spite of enhanced recruiting efforts,
right?
And enhanced visits. So it's just anytime our profession has been under scrutiny, and this you can go back historically and prove this to be true, it's challenging to get young people to consider us as a profession. And in Fairfax County, and I don't think it's finalized yet, but the Board of Supervisors and Chairman Jeff McKay in particular has enhanced compensation in Fairfax County, and some police officers in Fairfax County will see their compensation increase by 14%, which is a big chunk. But we need to find a way to attract young people to our profession to make it better, and it's not just compensation.
So on day one of year 2, what is your number one priority right now?
I'll give you one. We need to continue to work very, very hard to ensure that we have the police officers we need to protect Fairfax County. This is a great county, a great jurisdiction, and recruiting police officers to join the FCPD and join FCPD.org. That's my pitch. Join FCPD.org. We need to encourage people who are prone to service, and that's the number one priority.
So it's also your number one concern, it sounds like, though.
It is. It kind of goes hand in hand. So we probably need to double the size of our police academy classes for a couple of years, encourage our incumbent officers to stay engaged, stay with us. At tough moments, I look for people who, kind of bear down and let's get through this together. And it's my job as the leader to hopefully create an environment where police officers feel respected enough and heard enough. So, building respect, building trust within the agency, and ensuring cops know that I'm a due process police chief, I think bodes well for our incumbent officers and hopefully attracts new officers to our profession.
Chief, you're not bad on the mic here.
I have a face for radio.
Well, you're in the right place. But I've heard that you possibly had this opportunity before, this whole podcast thing.
So between between Baltimore and Fairfax, I had a moment where I was approached by someone about doing a podcast, and I considered it, and I was kind of down the road of trying to pull it off when the Fairfax opportunity came up. So
you had a name and a whole thing. You had you had T-shirts. You had what?
No,
how far down
no
the
T-shirts? If you give me an XL, unfortunately, every Christmas my mom gives me a new sweater, right? And it's a large every year. And I tell her every year, Mom, I'm an XL. You know what she says?
She's aspirationally.
She says, "Well, you should be a large." So she's giving me a large every year.
That's wrong.
So if you give me your podcast T-shirt, I will proudly wear it.
Oh,
but I think this is a way to go. You guys do a great job, and it's an honor to spend time with you on my 1-year anniversary.
Congratulations for it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we go, I have to ask Luke a leading question.
All right.
When's the last time you've been to the National Zoo, and what would be your go-to exhibit?
Oh, I love seeing the otters. The otters are so cute and
You were
funny.
so fast with that answer.
Yes, no. Like, they always make faces at you. I swear. Like, the last time I went, there was an otter who stuck a tongue out at me.
Oh, that's very sweet. That's cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine are seals and elephants. I'm not a panda girl, but I also love the flamingos. And this is where we're going with this. I love how the flamingos, like, they all turn together. They
Yeah.
all move, like, as a unit. It's just kind of funny to watch. So there was, like, a tragedy last night in the flamingo enclosure at the National Zoo. So they said a wild fox broke in through the heavy-duty metal mesh. So we're talking about, it's not like construction mesh. It's like this really thick mesh.
Whoa.
Overnight, slipped through this softball-sized hole and killed 25 flamingos and one duck.
25?
Yeah, out of 74. And he injured 3 of them. The northern pintail duck was also killed. And this is a first for the zoo. They said it's the first time a predator has breached the protective mesh since that exhibit opened in the 70s.
Wow. I've never thought about that, because the zoo is really inside Rock Creek Park. So I'm kind of surprised it's never happened before. But dang, that fox. Did they catch the fox?
You know what? I don't know if they caught the fox. They're setting up live traps. They're fortifying the habitats, obviously. But I also didn't realize the flamingos have it pretty good. They have this huge space, 9,750 square feet with a heated pool.
Oh my gosh.
It sounds like a Redfin listing and a barn. And they usually live, just fun facts, between 40 and 60 years. But like a third of their flock was taken down last night.
That's tragic. That's really sad. But that area they have probably costs like $10,000 a month, if that was an apartment.
You're like, but given the rent, it's no, that's awful. Well, I mean, I hope this doesn't happen again. It's just very sad.
Yeah, hopefully they catch the fox.
The perpetrator.
Yeah. Well,
that'll do it for us today. Thanks for joining us for the DMV Download, sponsored by Steamfitters Local 602.
this show is produced by me, Luke Garrett.
And me, Megan Cloherty. Our managing editor is Craig Schwab, and our music is by Real World.
Give us a review on the show page wherever you listen to this show if you get the chance. You can find out more about the show and become one of our VIP listeners at dmvdownload.com.
The DMV Download is a product of WTOP News. Listen on 103.5 FM in D.C., 107.7 FM in Virginia, 103.9 FM in Frederick, Maryland, online at WTOP.com, and on the WTOP News app. Have a great night.